Thank you for turning in a Capital Talk. We have a special guest with us today, Mr. Peter Ticktin, friend of Mr. President Trump, a strong supporter of the America First movement, and the author of What Makes Trump Tick. Thank you, Mr. Ticktin, for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. So, Mr. Ticktin, in his recent briefings in law enforcement, it is revealed that the Secret Service flagged Donald Trump would be assassinated as a suspicious up to an hour before the shooting, but lost him in the crowd. So do you believe this incident indicates security collapse, protocols, and what measures do you think should be taken to prevent such situations in future?
Well, to believe in facts is, well, scientists don't do it. Lawyers don't do it. I'm a lawyer. My background's in science. There's a saying that belief is the enemy of knowledge. And that's because if you believe in a fact, if you believe in God and you believe in things that I'm not talking about science now, then that's fine and that's great. There's nothing wrong with believing in those things in which we find spiritual relief and belonging. But I'm talking about facts. And right now, we don't know what the facts are. And we know that the facts are being investigated by the same institution, the FBI, that is trying to put our man, my president, Donald Trump, in prison. So when you look at it from that point of view and the way they're going after him, and the timing makes everything so suspicious because, let's face it, to terminate someone's existence would be the last thing that a person would do if you have a way of avoiding the need. So you have Donald Trump, who is the enemy of the left. The left have declared him to be an enemy. And in fact, considering things that they have on their agenda, it's understandable that he would be. It's understandable that a lot of us are. And unfortunately, the left has taken over a lot of our country. The left have taken over big business. They've taken over media. They've taken over most of social media. They've taken over our educational system. They've taken over many of our churches. They've taken control of much of what's left of America. And the thing that's standing between them completely controlling us, and not just us as individuals of where we go, what we do, or how much we pay in taxes, but to control our thinking, to control our freedom of speech, and to end our freedom of speech. These are all things on the agenda. And if you look at what the globalists look for and what they're doing, what they want to do, we need to be able to have the freedom of speech here. In many countries, it's gone. Canada's, for the most part, likely gone. You have a situation where Jordan Peterson, the famous psychologist, criticized the Prime Minister Trudeau and that criticism basically caused him now to be having his license pulled if he doesn't go for a form of re-education. So that's not a free country. And Australia is pretty well gone. Europe, yes, there's Hungary. There's still places of Europe where there people have freedom of speech, but it's really up to America right now, and America doesn't stand a chance unless it has Donald Trump. So it goes from Russian collusion and that nonsense. That's all in the case that I filed for Donald Trump against Hillary Clinton and Donna Schultz, Schiff, you name them, they're all in there. 31 defendants in that case. That's in appeal right now because we had a left-wing judge. And, so that's the first thing. The first avenue of attack was that. Actually, it was even before that. But let's just take it from there. Because from the day he came down the elevator steps on June 16th, 2016, I remember that date, but anyway, that from that date forth, it was war against Donald Trump. Then they tried to impeach him. Then that didn't work. Their efforts to put him in prison backfired for the most, for the most part. And then on the heels of the one thing that really was going to seal the deal against the left being able to take it back, which was Biden showing that he's basically a corpse of a man, dead man walking almost in the debate. And then shortly after that, we have this thing that is said by Biden, which is very suspicious, which is that the time has come for Donald Trump to be made the bullseye. And then 5 days later, there's a sharpshooter who takes a shot, took a perfect shot. Shot was absolutely perfect at the moment that the trigger was pulled. The shot was perfect. While the bullet was in the air, Donald moved his head.
Yeah.
And that caused the bullet, instead of going through basically where his eye was and through his cranium, to just nicking his ear, which is amazing. Because if the bullet just would have gone by, nobody would have given it a second thought. They would have figured, oh, it just would, some crazy shooter. But when it nicked his ear, and there was blood, that proved to us that there was a bullet and that it was real. I mean, we got people now saying the whole thing was a setup. There are people that think that the moon landing was a setup too. So there's crazy people. But this is getting a little bit of steam on the left because they just can't face reality, and they don't have to face reality because their news services will keep them in the dark, with false information. So this is an answer to your question, of the fact that things weren't done appropriately in the first place. There are so many questions. I mean, how did this guy get on top of the building? He's not Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So, he
And
had a
even
ladder.
actually, sorry to do it, but even actually the people shouting, that there is someone, let's talk about a little bit about the U.S. elections, and I have a question for you that why do you think the President Trump's victory in this upcoming presidential election is so vital for the survival for America?
Oh, I'm so glad that is, thank you very much. That's a great question. Let's just say Biden got another term, which he's fighting to do. There's ways of fixing the election. They're adding and planning on adding to the voter rolls. Usually the drop in the voter rolls of all of the applications is last minute, where, they have to be in, I think in most places 2 weeks before, maybe 3 weeks. But if they give them tens of thousands of registrations, then they're just going to basically process them. They're not going to have time to investigate each one or look at each one carefully. So that's the plan, because if you don't have the names on the voter rolls, you don't have the ability then to make a ballot. You can only make a ballot for somebody that's on the voter rolls. So let's just say that Biden were to win this thing, okay, which he's not going to win, because there's, even with all the cheating, Donald Trump is now gaining the black vote. Okay, these people are waking up. The Democrats they think these people are stupid. They think that that they're all homogenous. There's only one mentality, one group. They're not individuals. They don't see them in a real way, and they think that they're so blind they don't see what's going on with these prosecutions and so on. So let's just imagine for a second, we don't have to accept it as truth, just in terms of discussion. And I couch things this way because sometimes I'm on shows that they don't allow me to say things. So that we have a criminal in the White House. That the election was fixed. If the election was fixed the last time, then we had an insurrection. And the people that are guilty of this insurrection are criminals. What are they planning? Why are they so dedicated? Is it just one crazy dictator that wants to take over the world? I don't think so. Joe Biden is he's a shell of a man, and that's what they really wanted. They wanted somebody with a wooden head, and they got that. They got a vice president as well with a wooden head. Just people that will basically do what they need to get done, like automatons, while the deep state take care of all the things that need to be done and make all the decisions that need to be made and just basically dictate what is what, major decisions as to where we're going, dictated by the powers that be, the World Economic Forum, the people behind the World Economic Forum, China, which has, there's no question that this man Biden has sold influence to China. And it's not just that you sell influence and you get money because of the whole deal. Deep conversations. China can blackmail. They own him. And they own his son. And they own whatever. I understand that there's $8 billion of Iranian money that was in Pakistan, which Biden freed up. And before he freed it up, according to Patrick Byrne's book, that $8 billion, $100 million had to be put into a special bank account for Biden in order to free up the $8 billion. So, you wonder, how do these people get all the money they got? How did Obama had less than $1 million when he became president? How is he this wealthy man now? How is it the Clintons have, what do they have? They have at least hundreds of millions, if not billions at this point. How? From what? For making speeches? No. They've got all this from selling influence. So we know we're dealing with basically a criminal mentality. But what is the main goal? So if we go to the people behind Biden, not Biden and the Biden criminal family, so we go to these people and we say, where are you going? What are you planning for the second 4 years? And what we can see and what we can understand is that this is all climate related. These people have an agenda that has to do with climate control. And they see and they understand, and they're not entirely wrong on any of this. Just how you deal with it. If it were Donald Trump, he'd find fair ways and find ways in science or whatever to deal with the global warming problem. If he accepted and understood what it is for real, that it needed some kind of geoengineering. So you could do geoengineering. You can basically take moon dust and throw it into an orbit around the Earth, and you could basically lower the amount of sun radiation around the Earth. Or you could make a giant shield, 100 miles by 100 miles, and another one, and another one, and another one, and have them over the ocean, always blocking the sun, and so on and so forth. There's things that could be done, at least theoretically. There's also another way of dealing with global warming, which is to reduce the human population on the planet. The ultimate number of people, according to Bill Gates, and according to a number of others, and according to this monument that got built in Georgia that many people know about, also got blown up, but it's still there in 7 different languages. But the ultimate population is 500 million. That means 15 out of 16 of us have to go. If this is true, if they're doing this. So, and a lot of people think that that's what the vaccine is. Whether it is or not is yet to be determined. I'm not saying that this is what it is or this is a fact. All I'm saying is many, many people, a good portion of the United States, have no doubt about the fact that there's a seed of death in the vaccine that can be activated. It's also a means in science that it can be done. It's called antibody-dependent enhancement, which is what killed the ferrets with COVID-2 experiments on a vaccine that they did then. So these things are all there. So what would we expect? First of all, if you think that inflation is bad now, as Al Jolson used to say, you ain't seen nothing yet. Okay. Now he was talking about music, but the fact is that inflation is going to go sky high under Biden. I don't know how the Reserve or Donald Trump are going to be able to do anything about what's already been put in place, but please, God, get them in there so that they can basically stem this. But what we'd be looking at is them consolidating all of their power. If they have another 4 years, we will not end up having any personal freedoms. We will be gone. There will be no need for another election. If they want to go through the pretext of making one, it's all going to be under control. It's all going to be fixed, completely fixed. So that's where we are. In fact, we're going to know, just how bad the fix can be in this next election, because there's no question that who's going to go to the polls and vote for this old man. I mean, there's no momentum, there's no enthusiasm. At the same time, we got Donald Trump, who's been wrongfully persecuted. People are waking up; they're seeing it. It's not that they wake up and they say, "Oh, he shouldn't be persecuted like that." They're waking up and saying, "Oh my God, we have a federal government that now has taken and politicized and weaponized our justice system, so that they go against an opponent to the president, which is something that we've never seen." So, I mean, I've been on the planet for, 4.5 months longer than Donald Trump's been on the planet. I mean, we were classmates, we know each other and we're friends. I mean, we go back to when we were 15. So, so when you look at what's going to be happening over the next, yeah, you got a picture of us there. Donald the handsome one. I'm sorry to say. Okay, but in any event, we were very close in our senior year, and that feeling in our hearts as cadets is still there now. But he's the only one. There's nobody else that could possibly step in and take this country to where it needs to go at this point in time.
I think he's the only hope for America.
Yeah, without Donald Trump. And, I hate to sound like a historical kind of guy. As I mentioned, my background's in science. I deal with proving cases with evidence. I don't deal with proving cases with sympathy. I deal with reality. And my conclusions from what evidence I've seen. Now, perhaps I need to give you one other factor. For 9 months, I worked directly under Donald Trump, collecting evidence on January 6th. That was my job. I was looking at what was coming in. It was coming to me it's like drinking from a fire hose. It was so much information coming in at me. I immediately had to hire 5 people just to label and categorize and store the information. And January 6th, I can tell you, was nothing of what you think that it was. January 6th was actually planned 6 months before the election. I've seen the videos of the meetings on Zoom, where one of the people in those videos was actually infiltrating and recording with a separate camera the screen. And nothing that it's not what it seems to be. It's like we live in a matrix where the reality is one thing and the matrix is what everybody is watching and seeing. And this is why we get people now that are so far from reality that they think that Donald Trump planned the shooting. I mean, that the top of one's ear. I mean, William Tell, at least it was a whole apple on top of his son's head. Who would do that? It's impossible. And he's moving around, but there are people that believe it. And what I'm saying is not so much that that's not true, because we all can figure that that's not true. But the mentality of all these people, the people that suffer from from Trump derangement syndrome, which is, I used to think it was a cute name for strong belief against the candidate, but no, there really is something called Trump derangement syndrome. It's where you lose your ability to know what's happening, what the reality is, and you just go in. You're just part of that system, and that's what you believe, and that's good enough for you. I mean, for me,
Yeah.
I looked at the evidence about January 6th and the evidence regarding the elections. And I've seen those, and I can tell you the election was stolen, and I can tell you that January 6th was part of it, and January 6th was the seal on top of the whole deal to make sure that nobody can even speak about it afterward without being called an insurrectionist and so on. It's all part of the same deal. The deal that these people did, if you understood that, you'd understand the dangers of another term for this administration. And then how many people are coming across the border? Why is that? Why are the people coming across the border? What if somebody were to say, "Hey, look, let's assume for a minute these people have a plan and a purpose. It isn't just, oh well, we're one world." I mean, I love the song from John Lennon, "Imagine," but when you listen to the lyrics, it should be labeled the national anthem for the globalists and the far left, or for communism. Imagine no religion, no country, nothing to live or die for. Okay, I mean that's what this world is coming to under these people, and it's a horrible shame that
Yeah.
this would be.
I would like to ask you, based on your, close association with President Trump, your insights into his campaign strategies, how do you assess his prospects for the 2024 elections?
Okay, so that's a premise that isn't so. When I see Donald Trump, there's love between us,
Hmm.
uh, but I'm not part of his campaign.
Okay.
And I mean, so I'm giving you is my understanding of how things are. I do have a better understanding of Donald Trump than other people, and
Okay.
I'm still his lawyer in that one case in regard to Hillary Clinton. It's under appeal right now, but I'm involved there, just watching. Having been his lawyer, I'm subject to people looking for sanctions. In one particular case, they want to nail me. They send the judge the ruling by Judge Middlebrooks, so they send this other judge. It's a far left person, a Bush appointee, no less. But the hatred that comes to me from that. Most of my cases, I don't have that kind of problem at all. But with this case, it that's coming up. But so there are advantages and disadvantages. There's knowing what's going on. There's providing information, which I do. I have several sources of people that know about different kinds of things that are going on that get me that information, and I get it directly to where it needs to go, which is to Donald Trump. So I'm involved and in that way, but I'm not. I can't just drop in and I don't give him political advice. He doesn't ask me for political advice.
Yeah, need to just would trying to understand your opinion about this. So that's why I just asked you the question.
Okay, about the election, where we're going on that. We need everybody to come out and vote. If everybody now says, "Oh well, he's got it licked because he got shot," that would be a really big mistake. We've got it
Yeah.
licked because you are going out to vote, and by you I mean everybody who sees this. If you don't go out and vote, well, that's going to be a whole different story. So don't assume that we have it licked, because they're cheating. Okay, and I know how they cheat. If you see 2,000 Mules, it's a pretty good idea of what goes on and what they're doing and how they're doing it. That's the ballot end of it. And we've got a lot of people working on it from the point of view of the voter rolls as well. I say we, I mean the Trump people have a lot of people out there doing stuff. And there's so many independent people that I work with that are also dealing with these voter rules. So that's where we're going to curtail a lot of the cheating. We're going to contain it. What worries me more is this: we're now sitting in the middle of July, so we've got July to August, August, September, September, October. We got 3.5 months
Yeah.
that we got to get through
Yeah.
before the election date. These
Yeah.
people are absolutely desperate. Okay, I remember as a young child. Donald and I were both born in the year after World War II, within a year of the end of the war. And, there's still air raid sirens going on and still air drills in school, even after I was 5, 6, 7 years old. Even after I remember when I was, I think, 12 years old, we still had one that took place, a big national one where, and I remember, and that was the first one where we had any protesters. So there were no protesters for any of these things. Everybody pulled over. Every kid got under the dashboards. Every parent got over their kids, did exactly what they're supposed to do, and nobody objected. There was no dissent because it was shortly after the war. And during the war, if you did things that were dissenting and you acted like an enemy to the people, you were an enemy to the people. So it was a different time from where we come from, a more dangerous time. But anyway, when I was a child, my parents pulled over, and when you have parties, when I was a teenager and they had people over, they would be dancing and drinking and having a happy time. But in those days, the women went. I'm not sure where they went, whether they went to the kitchen to take care of whatever. I don't know, because I was a boy. And boys went with the men, and the girls went with the ladies. And so, and I remember this discussion by the men that were there, and they were all kind of bright. My father was a physician. He was a general practitioner, delivered babies in people's apartments, and took out people's tonsils in his office and so on. I mean, that's what they did in those days. But he was an educated man. He dealt with educated people. So I had a room full of intelligent men. Not all of them professionals, but intelligent. And I don't know why I remember this, because I was so young. I shouldn't remember this, but I remember there was this discussion, and the discussion was what went wrong in Germany that caused Hitler. And it wasn't like, here's the topic for today. It was just something that just came up, and that this was what got discussed that evening. What was it? If there was one thing that went wrong, what was it that caused everything else to follow? And they actually came to a conclusion, and I remember their conclusion, which was that the criminals took over. Once the criminals take over, they don't want to leave. Let's assume that we're talking about people now that are on the take to China, on the take to Iran, people that are making decisions as to what the American policy should be, people making decisions of how to get out of Afghanistan so that our Air Force base can go to China. Let's just imagine that that's a possibility. I'm not saying it is, because I don't know that to be a fact. But let's just say that's what we have in government now. Criminals, people that are on the take. Okay. People where they're brothers to the president are going around and taking over businesses or whatever. Let's just say we're dealing with a real criminal mentality. And let's just say that they actually stole the election and it can be proven. Well, they can't leave. If they give up control, they're going to be hung. So they have to stay. But these are dangerous months, these 3 months, 3.5 months between now and the election. We don't know what's coming, whether it's a virus, whether it's a
Mhm.
missile, or whether it's another attempt of assassination. We don't know. But every day it gets more and more dangerous because the people involved here are dangerous.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know,
Last night, I read a story about a Charles Martel, a guy who fought in, I think, in 8th century, who saved Christianity and also the Western civilization. So I thought I just, take President Trump as a Charles Martel nowadays because he's, doing the, same thing. He against illegal immigrants who are coming in the under Biden administration, and is also a safe, you can say, a safe Christian conservative values as well in the United States. And did you ever hear about it?
no, I'm not familiar. But what I can
Okay.
say is that there's reasons for everything, and the reasons are not necessarily apparent. So we know that we have a lot of infiltrate age men, young men that have come into this country, and we know that they're scattered out, but they're organized and they're together in different places throughout the
Yeah.
country. They're in small towns, just strategic small towns. The small town that would be just off a highway to be able to get to the other towns, a major highway, I mean, or they're in the major centers, and they're
Yeah.
there and not necessarily looking for work, but they're being supported and they are to some extent organized. We also have all these people that have come in and given their identification information and so on. And it's very easy to take that person and put their information onto an application for registration to vote, to be on the voter rolls. And that's another, look at the millions and millions of people that have come over that now can be added to all of that. It's just too
Yeah.
much of a
Yeah.
task. But when you look at Biden's desperation of why he has to stay, don't think it's not connected to the fact that the works are all in place for him to have a victory. Except he's not going to have a victory because we now have the establishment realizing that there's no way in the world that another term for Biden is worse than another term for Donald Trump. They know very well that we're done, that our gooses are cooked if these people get another 4 years. So we
Yeah.
have the other part of the Republican establishment. We've got the black population. The Latinos are smart people. They know what's going on. They've seen their own governments in Latin America that have gone communist, and they see exactly what's happening here. You talk to anybody from Venezuela, and they're not so happy with the idea of
Yeah.
another term for Biden. They know because they see the oppression, they see the weaponizing of the justice system, and so on. We are getting the young vote much more than we did last time. We're getting the women vote. We're getting the vote this time around from all factions because people are waking up. And at the same time as we're getting the vote, the actual voters are becoming disenchanted with the idea of another term for Biden. Not that they would vote for Trump, some of them, but they're just not going to bother to go to the polls.
Yeah.
So, what we're seeing, what we're going to see is a massive wave of people that voted for Donald Trump. And you don't want to ever be one that isn't part of that. You're going to have to
Yeah.
lie to everybody later. Oh man, did you go and vote? Yes, I did. You're going to have to be a liar all of a sudden to your friends and your relatives and so on, because otherwise you're going to look like like the guy that couldn't be bothered to save his own country and save his own family from what's coming. Because what is coming is threatening to your very life. If you don't go and vote, you're not doing this one simple little thing that you could do to basically save your own life and the life of those you love. And am I exaggerating? Am I hyping this thing up? I don't think so. Take a look at the World Economic Forum. Take a look at what it is that they're projecting. Take a look at what it is that they're saying. I saw a video of one of the leaders of the World Economic Forum and giving a speech to others. I don't know who they were. I think they were new members, but I never could figure out from the video who exactly the audience was. But what he was saying is what he said, what we needed was a means of reducing the population without violence. And now we have it, he said. So if you want to be controlled and ruled by that, we already know about the World Health Organization. We know that they're in charge now if there's another epidemic or pandemic, or if there's global warming that they call a pandemic, or if there's a dislike to firearms that they call a pandemic, because they're in charge. We've now signed over our sovereignty. Biden did that in the month of May. He signed over our sovereignty in the event that there's another pandemic. And that pandemic can be just declared by the World Health Organization, and nobody's allowed to even question it. It means that they're in charge, and our federal government will do what they tell them to do. If our federal government is under Biden and they tell us all that we need to take the shot or wear masks or whatever, then that's what the federal government is going to enforce. And God help us if we don't go along with it. So for those that watch what I have to say.
So there's a last question I would like to ask you. Do you think that the Donald Trump will have so many voters this time around? I know he will win landslide this election, but I just want to know your opinion.
What happened to assume that Donald Trump gets into office? If he doesn't, I would not. That's not going to be a very good scenario if he does not get into office, because nobody's ever going to believe that it wasn't done illegally and improperly. God help us if anything befalls him that causes harm to him too, because it's going to all be the same. I mean, when Jesus was killed, there were millions that were killed after him.
Yeah.
And at that time, the population of the earth was 200 million, and you had millions that were killed of his believers. Well, what's going to happen here if that? God help us. I just don't even want to think about it. Just the thought of that, when that happened, my friends and I, it's funny that some people were angry, but most of us were just so saddened. And I can't tell you why we're saddened, because it's an emotion. You get the emotion, you try to figure out why you got it. But, we just want to burst out in tears. It was just horrible. Anyway, he's not going to have the same problems that he had the first time, because he's well aware of it. He's going to be taking a completely different approach the second time around. We've got to clean out the deep state. There's no way that we can succeed except put a Band-Aid on the problem, unless we actually go out and cut out the cancer. And that's what needs to be done. Okay, we got to get America back. We got to get people understanding what we have here. What an opportunity we have to be able to have a positive outcome to our own lives and advance. And that can only happen if Donald Trump gets reelected. Otherwise, we're really gone. I'm telling you, inflation. If you've seen inflation, you haven't seen what's coming. And that's just a piece of it. The police state that will follow. We're looking for something that's unimaginable, but it's coming unless Donald Trump gets elected.
Yeah, we should pray, and I have a strong feeling that the Donald Trump will be in the White House in 2024. And also, Mr. Ticktin, one last question is: do you have a message for Trump supporters, and also people who, my audience as well, watching this TV channel and this show?
Yes, I have one message.
Yeah.
Yes. Fight, fight, fight. And don't stop.
Amen. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much that you are joining us today. And I hope that you will join us again very soon.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed myself.